Today we're going to get an update from Dr. Drezner on the governor's new orders. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 7 of the Jimmy and Kyle Show. As always, the man that I affectionately call my great-grandpa, Jimmy McAllister.
You know what? It seems like a lot more than 7 episodes, Kyle.
It does.
We're lucky to have Dr. Drezner today to talk to us about things, so it's not just us two knuckleheads talking. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Today we're going to get an update from Dr. Drezner on the governor's new orders. We'll talk a little bit about the tryout process or the player placement process, and we'll go through that. And before we get to that, we're going to do the Show Us What You Got segment. First coming to us is Keelan Tudor from Geo9 Copa. She's got a little mini ball juggling. She looks like she's better than you at that, Jimmy. Oh,
well, that's pretty good. Oh, yeah. That is pretty good. I don't want to try that. I will try that with a golf ball, though.
Oh, all right. Second video, we've got Caitlin from West G10 Blue who's going to show us a little trick shot into the bin.
G Blue. Awesome.
Oh, that's some engineering.
That's
Pythagorean theorem or something.
Oh, that's pretty good right there, I tell you.
Yeah, good job, Caitlin.
Yeah, no kidding.
All right, so to start, let's do a little recap of player placement process this week. Obviously, this weekend, coaches were making all their calls to families. Hopefully, all the families got their calls. They should have. We have quadruple checked the lists over and over and over again to make sure that everybody got their calls. So I want to give a big shout out to the coaches right now, because we have taken what we would normally do in 4 weeks, and we work 12 hours a day around the clock to make these things happen. And they've taken all that work and slammed it into 1 week. You know, I know that myself, Jimmy, you, all of our directors, the coaches, there's been nonstop calls and emails and discussions about players and how do we do it, and answering parent questions. You know, I was up till 5:30 in the morning and then got up at 8 to turn around and start making calls again. I've had longer naps than that. It's probably not good for my health there, Dr. Drezner. I apologize, but just a couple days of it. So,
you know, the directors, the coaches have done such a great job during this. I couldn't be more proud. Yeah. The engagement with our players has been fantastic, you know, and I honestly believe, you know, I've always been told if you want to have nice coaches, hire good, nice people. They really care about the kids, and the engagement has been the same way. And I'd really like to thank the parents for supporting us. Without them, none of this happens. We tried to communicate this player placement in a proper way. I think everybody was prepared, and the parents really helped the process come, because, you know, we had to try to get everything done in a certain amount of time. I just think the whole soccer community, it just shows how important it is for any type of youth sport, for kids getting together, for having friends on the team, for camaraderie, for being a part of a team. It just shows that there's some real value to the team thing and to youth sports. So I couldn't be more impressed with all the work that everybody did, from the players to the parents to the coaches to the directors. I'd just like to thank everybody for their hard work.
Yeah, absolutely. And to the parents for being very understanding with everything that's going on. You know, I mean, it's difficult for everyone. I mean, this time of year is difficult no matter what, whether you're on a field or you're doing a player placement. But the parents have been pretty understanding with everything and appreciative. And, you know, there's some that, you know, would like placements maybe to have gone differently. But at the end of the day, we have had so many conversations about where these guys fit, and we're going to give those players opportunities when we get back that maybe weren't placed where they would have hoped to have been placed. So when we get back, we will definitely make good on those things. So yeah, that's kind of,
you know, there's another part to it. This pandemic has been long. Obviously, we've been staying at home. I'd like to shout out to the volunteers. Without our medical advisory committee, we wouldn't be where we are right now in our understanding and our planning process. Without the team managers keeping these teams together, we wouldn't be where we are right now. So it takes it's a stupid thing, but it takes a whole community to do this. And I usually don't deal with those kind of things, but it's the truth. And I just would really like to thank everybody. And it's still ongoing. We still need to do the right things. Even though sometimes I don't like what John has to say or Sergey Gupta or Dr. Fossey, it's the reality, and we have to do what's right for everybody. So maybe a segue into the next part of the conversation there, Kyle, but we're lucky to have John here today with us to talk a little bit about what's going on. So
so let's jump into the meat of the episode now. Sure. John, thanks for coming back.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So with the governor's new orders that came out yesterday, obviously extending the stay at home through May 31st and then having the phase plans return to activities and lifting some of the restrictions on social distancing. What kind of recap can you give us from your point of view as a doctor and the head of our medical committee?
Sure. Well, thanks again, Jimmy and Kyle, for having me on the show, and appreciate what you're doing to keep the club up to date with everything that's going on. Obviously, there's a lot of moving parts, and we seem to get updates, all the time, especially from the medical side. The first thing I just want to say is that the medical advisory committee has been having weekly meetings with, club leadership. So the two of you, Alex and Rich, and just having a good dialogue about when we're given the opportunity to start practicing again, what will that look like? How do we roll out? I think some of the guiding principles that we've been going by is, of course, we have to follow public health guidance, that we're not going to get in front of that or do anything that's outside of what the safety officials say is okay to do, and that the health and safety of our players and of our coaches is, of course, our first priority. So, with that in mind, the announcement from Governor Inslee to extend the stay-at-home order, but then also give us some details about the phase-out plan to reopen the economy and lift some of the social distancing restrictions, gives us a lot to work by. So, although he extended the stay-at-home order to May 31st, he also sort of announced that we're in this phase one of rollout that doesn't really impact what we're doing right now at home or Seattle United, but it gives us a time frame about when phase two might start. And there's supposed to be 3 weeks between phases, but with the stay-at-home order through May 31st, I think most people are anticipating that phase two would start no sooner than June 1st. And so with that in mind, phase two allows a little bit more opportunity to get outdoors and do some recreation in groups of 5 or less. And to me, that opens the door for what we've been talking about in our weekly calls about how we might phase in some of our training and practices. And this is also paralleling, I think, what the MLS, the NWSL, some of the other professional leagues are talking about, that the first thing we're going to do is not jump into big team practices with direct physical contact. I think what parents and players can understand, that the first thing we're going to do is dip our toe in the water and make sure that we're all on board with what we need to be doing from hygiene and social distancing restrictions, even when we're trying to play soccer. So I think what we've been talking about is a small group training, less than 5 people to start, no physical contact. We're going to try to keep the players 6 feet apart at all times. There's not going to be team huddles and lines and periods of time when the teams are gathering. Coaches will be central to their groups. Coaches will be in cloth, face masks or facial coverings. We're going to ask the kids to have hand sanitizer, for before and after practice. Kids are going to have to wear facial coverings from the car to the field, and then again, back to the car. And I think we're not going to have any, of course, shared equipment, no pennies, and things like that, at least to start. So I think this opportunity that phase 2 might sort of be around the corner now. June 1st, it still feels like it's far away, but it's going to come before we know it.
Yeah.
And I think that's why what we've been doing so far is hopefully going to be really helpful, that we've been planning already for when this is going to come. And I think we'll get some more specific details out to the parents as soon as we can, some written information. I think lots of education to the kids through all the coaches' Zoom meetings that are happening and stuff like that, so they know when they get to the field, this isn't the first time they're hearing, that they got to put their bags 6 feet apart, that they can't have the same type of social interactions that they once did, at least to start while we're in that initial phase 2.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that came out of that was that plan, and the fear of the unknown for everyone has been the biggest, I think, hold up in terms of how do they go about their daily lives, what do they plan for financially and whatnot. I know for me at home, I mean, I'm a very organized person. I like to have things planned out. Without having that plan for the last 2 months, it's been a little bit strange for even me personally in terms of how I go about things. I've tried to give myself structure. Parents are trying to give their kids structure. But I think with this, knowing that, hey, these are the phases, here's a basic timeline on when these things are going to happen,
Right.
That gives people a lot of comfort as well. It helps them plan out, hey, I got a lot of house projects to do in the next month. I better get done that I thought maybe I'd have a couple months to do. The wife's going to be on me to get those done. But now we can start planning out, our sessions, what it's going to look like. The return to play that we've been working on as a staff now has a little bit more legs to it. Now we understand, okay, maybe it's going to be probably 3 weeks, maybe 4 of the, small groups, the 4-player trainings. And I think it's also important to note that, a lot of people, when they hear, 6 feet, I think they think of the distance as being bigger than it is sometimes.
That's not that far.
6 feet is 2 yards.
2 meters.
When we return to play, those kids will be given much more than 2 yards apart from each other.
Yeah.
So that should help people be a little bit at ease as well.
Yeah.
And then it jumps all the way to, I think it's less than 50 people in a group for the phase 3, and then phase 4 obviously return to normal activities. So for me, it's just really nice to have that timeline now that we can. It helps us plan.
Yeah, there's no doubt it will help us plan. I think how what people should also understand is that the government and public health officials have clearly said 3 weeks is the minimum amount of time. But there are some metrics that they're going to look at to make sure that we're okay to move into phase, to go from phase 1 to 2 or from phase 2 to phase 3. And that's important to understand because the metrics include, the prevalence and the rate of new infections within the community. And so if we're moving from phase 2 to phase 3 at some point, it's also because the general prevalence in new infections is less, which is also reassuring. And gives us a little bit more comfort in having our players start to do more or potentially start to have physical contact and things like that. When I was looking at the phases this morning again and just trying to think about how this might impact the club, obviously I think we know what we're going to do when we have the opportunity with phase 2. Phase 3 is pretty broad, less than 50 people. And what does that mean? I do think that obviously the kids will start to have a lot more interactions outside of soccer as well, and that we'll get back to some real practices during that phase. But teams are also going to need an opportunity to get back in shape and conditioning and stuff like that. And so I think there's also going to be a need just for physical reconditioning before we're really talking about scrimmages and games and stuff like that. And of course there's an unknown period of time, hopefully 3 weeks, but it could be longer between phase 3 and phase 4 and go from there. But I agree with you, Kyle. It was really almost reassuring to finally have a timeline and some real guidance. Yeah.
And yeah, on that point, I mean, these phases could get extended a little bit if those curves don't continue on the trend down. But even just having, the idea of what those phases look like and what a general idea of how long the phase is huge, I think. Jimmy, you got anything on that you want to say?
Yeah, I just kind of went out with the internet, but I will say that when I started this game and I started in youth soccer, it was kind of like run out of the trunks of the DOCs or the volunteers or whoever.
Sure.
We have now with the RCS and the ECNL major responsibilities to the families and the kids. All of us on this show are parents. We want to make sure that we are as safe as possible when we get back to play. And we want to let all the parents know that we do have a plan and we will be putting that plan into motion. For you just to send your kids back and us to say, well, we don't know what we're doing. And we will have an articulated plan out before we ever step on the field. How the field schematic's going to look, how many kids are playing, what physical drills they'll be doing, how far will the coach be, where will the coach station be. So, with help from the medical advisory committee, I think all the clubs are trying to do this and get a grip on this. And it's just been, it's been an experience to talk through this, because I think some of this stuff, will be the new norm. The hand sanitizers, and not drinking out of the same Gatorade bin, all the things we have to do to make sure our kids are safe. This is just going to be, not sharing pennies, these type of things. We'll just have to change the way we do business.
Yeah. Yeah. And even, how many times have you seen all these kids sharing, I ran out of water, let me have some of your water, and they take the cap off and put the water bottle in their mouth, but they're still touching the water bottle. And
when I played, we didn't have those nice little plastic bottles. We drink out of the same puddle. Things have advanced since I played. If you could get water in your shoe, you'd drink out of that, And this was when I played for the Sounders, not the youth. So we've come a long ways, but obviously, in these days, we need to go even farther. And like we say, we were the first club not to go on an ECNL trip when John said, guys, I think it's time to cut this off. We will be very careful when we come back. We will travel with a purpose if we travel at all, and only when it's safe to go, only when it makes sense. So we're trying to do things right. And I think most of, if not all the clubs in the RCL, the Crossfires, the everybody, the East Sides, the Washington Premiers, everybody's trying to do the right thing, because we have a responsibility with people's most precious thing, and that's our kids, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's important to note as well as the clubs. I mean, you serve on the RCS, which is the regional club subcommittee for the state, with 5 other directors, 6 other directors, something like that. And there's collaboration that goes on there, obviously. But I think what this whole situation has brought is the collaboration has been phenomenal between the clubs, working with each other.
You have to share your knowledge. I mean, it's not only locally with the RCS, it's nationally. I was just on a show on soccer.com the other day, talking with the director from Chicago, talking with another director from Colorado. We're all in the same boat. We're all trying to create content via the internet, Zoom, or, the Jimmy and Kyle show, whatever it is. We're all trying to come up with new vehicles to engage the kids. Some of this stuff is fantastic. You look at top teams. If a top young ladies team at 17 plays in a tournament on a Sunday, they need a cool down and a rehab session on a Monday. You don't have to have a physical location to do that. You can use Zoom. You can use some of the other products that it's going to make us better. Every situation in life you have to look at that sometimes isn't the greatest. You have to look at, what do you learn from it? How can it benefit you to be better? I think we can use the internet better than we have in the past. And this pandemic has forced us to do that. It's forced us to communicate better with the parents. It's forced us to look at hygiene. Honest to God, a few years back, hygiene was probably not really in the conversation when we were talking about a season. Now it's the focal point of our conversation. So in that, it's good as well. Don't you agree, John?
Yeah, absolutely. It's brought a lot of things. The other thing I would say, Jimmy, is that, the same way the soccer community is collaborating to figure out a way ahead, I'd say that the medical community is doing the same thing. This is all uncharted territory. And I think, at least within the sports medicine world, everyone's talking to everyone. We're trying to figure out all the same questions. And I think in terms of what we can give back to the club from the medical advisory committee, it's information we're hearing from other experts around the country, looking at the same issues.
Yeah, and you got to realize too, other clubs around the country, everybody's in a different boat right now in terms of where they are at in this coronavirus.
Right.
And so for us, we're one of the first ones that got hit. So what we do may be able to help other clubs around the country with their return to play as well, their protocols for how they get back out onto the field in the small groups, the hand sanitizers. I know we've talked about putting up little sandwich signs at fields with basic rules on there about how to exit and enter the parks and how you go about placing your backpacks and your water bottles and whatnot. And a lot of these instructions will be sent out to families once we're done with them. I know we've got a couple drafts going right now of those. So all this information and these strict guidelines will be sent out to the families so that everybody's on the same page, so that everybody is aware of how we are trying to just drop a kid off at training. You know, that part changes when you drop your kid off, when you pick your kid up, those sorts of things. We're trying to minimize those contacts between people.
Yep.
And I can tell you right now, if a child goes to training, depending on age, and says they don't know about any of this, then it's a systematic failure on our part. If we can't communicate well enough for everybody to know that the coach should be in a coned off area, the coach should be in a X amount of feet away from everybody, the coach should have a mask, everybody should be aware of these things before we start training. And that's our job to communicate. This crisis has two different elements. It's the safety side and it's the financial side as well. So we've tried to create a maintenance type program to keep people in the game while we can still support at a certain level our coaches and keep them in the game. And from early on, our goal from the business side was to keep kids engaged. It's lonely out there for kids that don't have their friends with them. I mean, there's going to be issues where kids just aren't doing that great. They don't have their friends. They don't have their school. They don't have their normal activities. For somebody like me, it's not that bad. But imagine if you're a senior in high school, how you feel. You're not going to prom. You're not doing the graduation possibly. You know, hopefully all those kids will get the benefit of being a senior and the fun I had. But, you know, there's a lot of problems out there. So there's a business side to this that I think that we've worked hard to try to get right. There's no way to perfect it. And then there's the safety side of it. And if we don't marry those two together, we're not going to be in business very long. So it's very important that we're all over this and use the expert opinions to figure out how to navigate these waters.
Yeah, no doubt. One other thing I would say to the players and the families that we should remind ourselves on a frequent basis, no matter what phase that we're in, is that now we all have a greater responsibility to not send our kids to practice if they're sick.
Yes. And I was going to bring that up. Thanks for.
I think for a long time, you know, if your kid didn't have a fever, if they went to school, if they generally were just doing well enough, you'd sort of were worried that they would miss practice with the coach or whatever, and you'd get your kid to practice. Well, the landscape has changed, and so, you know, if your kid is sick with new symptoms, with a cough, you know, fever, any type of shortness of breath, you know, chills, body aches, just doesn't feel right. These are reasons not to send your kid to practice, and we have to emphasize that over and over for a long period of time, all through the fall, you know, et cetera.
I think, and when you talk about that, the culture of youth sports and business world as well has been, oh, you've got a cold, well, you got the sniffles, you need to come in anyway. Things like that.
Who would do that?
You know,
who would do that? Who would count how many years they've worked without being sick?
I don't know. Maybe somebody on this call. I don't know.
By the way, it was 30 years. I never missed a day's work. 30 years.
I think this has given everybody a different perspective on that. Right? Is, you know what? Hey, and it's almost being hypersensitive, which is okay right now. You know what? Hey, you've got a runny nose. You're coughing. You're doing this. No. Stay home. Don't come out here to training. You know, it's okay. You're not going to be punished for it. Nothing's going to happen. Health right now is number one. That is your priority. Is number one is health. And so we've got to make sure that everybody understands that. Obviously, we're going to communicate that with our coaches. Don't let kids show up. If you see them come out and they're hacking up along, send them back home. Do not let them come out and try to train. I know, you know, when I grew up, you know, I grew up in great sports state of Texas, and you know,
here we go. I got to hear about.
There we go. I think
I have to throw it in there.
Do they play high school football there?
My old man would say, hey, listen, are you throwing up? Well, no. All right, well, you're going to training. And it didn't take that much cajoling because I wanted to go out, even sometimes when I was throwing up. But, now it's a little bit more parents and everybody's, I think, taking a step back and realizing that we don't need to do that. And we don't want to be responsible for exposing other people just in case.
For sure.
And you know what? Let me tell you something. There's some mechanical issues with that as well. You send a kid to training that's not feeling well. He starts coughing and sputtering early in the training session. The parent drives home. We've got a problem. You've got one coach there with 16 kids, one sick kid, and the parent won't be back for 2 hours. It's 48 degrees and raining sideways at Lower Woodland Playfield. We really got to think about what we're doing. If the kid's not feeling well, there's ramifications. They can get even sicker. I did get a call, Kyle, that the rule at Seattle United that you can never, ever have alcoholic beverages the day you have training. Somebody called in and wanted to know what's in that big white cup you're drinking.
It's tea. I mean, it's not even coffee.
It better be herbal.
It's not even coffee.
It's when you're on this phone call. That
you know what?
Counts.
I have been very good during this quarantine because I think people are either going to pack the pounds on or they're going to lose them. And hey, I have lost 33 pounds during this. Yeah, I'm getting shredded, Jimmy. Shredded.
Everybody, he said if he goes to Surf Cup, he's going to be shredded and walk around with his shirt off.
Exactly.
That's a health issue as well. That's a mental health issue. Now I don't get to do that. It's really quite depressing. There you go.
So,
well, our loss.
One thing you touched on earlier that I want to touch on a second is communication. We talk about all the things that it's forced us to do. Our communication has always been very good. I think it's at the top of the game when you compare it to any other clubs and whatnot. But this has forced communication to be even better. The one thing when we send out the surveys, two things when we send out the surveys, the one thing besides fields that we, always hear from families about is communication, from the club, from the coaches, from the directors, whatnot. This time has forced us, whether it's through Zoom meetings, whether it's through phone calls just to check up on people, it's forced us to communicate better with our families. And hopefully everybody can see that and appreciate it.
Not only better, when you say better, I don't know what that means, but there needs to be different levels of communication. I think the first Jimmy and Kyle show we did with Medical Advisory Committee and John and this call today, there needs to be different levels of communication and different knowledge sources. Yeah. It does me no good to come on a station and talk about medical issues. I'm not a doctor. I didn't go to school that long.
You played one on TV once.
Yeah, it's important that we have people like John and parents in the club and qualified people talk about what the future lies for the club. And you can't over communicate. And we're trying our best to make sure the parents are comfortable with what we're doing. And having a medical advisory committee in itself. There's been other times when we've had to communicate the field turf issue with the rubber and the field turf. The head
concussions.
Issue, who could head a ball?
The heading.
Concussions. The medical advisory committee is essential to a 2,100 kid club like Seattle United. We don't have all the answers. People ask us, well, Jimmy, what's your opinion? My opinion is that I need to call the medical advisory committee and let them formulate an opinion. So the different areas that our communication is coming from, maybe a board member, somebody on the medical advisory committee, a strength and fitness person when we're sitting at home and having to have things to do, maybe somebody like Jasmine that knows about our trainer that knows about warm downs and stretches for young ladies for ACL or ACL problems and guys. So I think that the communication's coming from different directions, which I think is healthy.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, it's not just you and I sitting here blabbing about things we may not know completely about.
Well, we do that often, but we do that and have some real stuff,
We do it anyway, but when it's something like this, it's better to bring on Dr. Drez. We're going to get you your own TV show like Dr. Oz there.
All right, I'm looking forward to that.
We're going to get this going.
Yeah, we'll at least a few followers.
John, is there anything else that you think is important for the families to know about, or anything else you want to mention that goes along with this kind of return to activities phases that we're in?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, stay tuned, right? We're actively planning. If you have questions or concerns, please reach out. Reach out to you, Kyle, or you, Jimmy. They can reach out to me. And, we want to hear those concerns, but know that we're going to approach this cautiously, very thoughtfully, follow the public health recommendations, what's going on in the rest of the sports medicine community, and bring that to the club. And so I say just stay tuned, and we'll make everyone aware of all the procedures that we need to do to roll out safely.
Hey, John, I got a question for you. Obviously, everybody knows we partner with UW Medical, UW Medicine. Is your clinic at the UW open for business for therapy? I mean, I went and rehabbed my shoulder there.
Yeah.
Are you guys still open? Are you closed down as well, or how's that going?
It is just sort of reopening. We stayed open for the urgent needs and new injuries and things like that, and people in pain, etc. But like all the other clinics and hospital systems in the area, we had to shut it down a little bit to the non-essential visits. As of May 1st, at University of Washington, those ambulatory clinics are opening back up again. So yeah, we're seeing patients and old injuries, new injuries, etc. Physical therapy is open for you, Jimmy. I think they got some spots for you this week if you need it.
Mine's more on the mental side.
Yeah.
So kids with ACL injuries, have they been able to come in, or are they just starting to come in to get their treatment, or they doing it at home? Or?
Yeah, so there was no gap for those individuals. So if, let's say, they had a major surgery in February, they were able to get what we would consider essential post-operative rehab through this entire time period. So we've had, that would be to me an essential visit, that you need to have that continued rehab. So that stuff's already been happening, and if there has been a little bit more of a delay or gap or choices made, not to maybe come as frequently, we can start to make that up.
Yeah. I really like to thank UW Medicine for all they do. We have that we can call in, and our kids can get appointments, and ACL problems, hips, everything else. It's been invaluable for our kids to get in and get appointments and get sorted out. So it's been really good partnership, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Kyle?
Absolutely.
Yeah. John, any closing thoughts for us?
No, just appreciate working with you guys and everything you guys are doing for the club and the presence of the club in the community and for all our kids. So just thanks a lot as a parent as well in the club. I appreciate what you do.
Yeah. Thanks, Doc.
Thanks, John.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Jimmy, you got anything?
No, I just appreciate John's time. It's invaluable. I appreciate our relationship with UW Medicine, and stay safe out there. And hopefully, we get on the field soon, and I'll get to see all you guys again.
Right.
Yeah. As always, everyone, podcast is on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, obviously YouTube channel. Till then, stay safe, everyone.